Welcome back to another episode of Sticky Note Conversations with Erika Washington. I'm so excited for you all to listen to the second half of my conversation with Wil Black, our music producer. I hope you enjoy it as much as we enjoyed chatting with each other. You know, I've always wondered how many people, if they had a do-over, would they still whoop their kids? You know, knowing better and knowing differently. I won't even say better, knowing differently, because I'll say that, I spanked my children, at least my oldest, and my middle one, maybe once or twice. I know I probably threatened her with a wooden spoon. She likes to bring that up sometimes. But like my youngest, I didn't, because I started to see things differently, and it didn't really make sense to me, and it wasn't actually helpful. And I started to realize, like, okay, some things don't even, it's not even working. It's not even doing the thing that I'm trying to do. And so in the end, it feels like we're just trying to scare them into submission. And, partially because we're scared of, them doing something that's going to be detrimental to them or what have you. But I realized that, if I had to do over, I would have never spanked any of my kids ever. I think there are other ways, and not to say that they, shouldn't be disciplined, because kids should be disciplined. But I realized there were other things that I could do that, would get to them more to understand that what they did was wrong, taking certain things away. Like my oldest, when she was very little, always wanted to wear dresses to school, always wanted to wear, every day wanted to wear a dress. Kindergarten had to wear a dress every day. And I realized that when I made her wear pants, that upset her a lot. And so when I forgot what she did something, and putting her on punishment, I told her, you had to wear pants to school all week. Like, that was a thing that, like, straightened it out. I don't want to wear pants. I wear pants to school. Like, it was a thing that got her to understand that there were consequences to her behavior, and now you have to wear pants. And it sounds like the silliest thing, but it's a thing that worked. But it was something different with my middle, something different with my youngest, and what have you. But just, all out, whooping or spanking them wasn't going to be the thing. And so I look now at, like, can we find alternatives? And people talk a lot about gentle parenting and all of that. But I also see a lot, again, online and comments, and they're like, well, it worked for us. We were whooped or we were beat or whatever. And, kids nowadays, that's just what they need. And that's why they're wilding out X, Y, and Z. And I just don't think that that's true. And then how do we break that pattern of, because I agree with you that, I feel like it was learned behavior, because that's how they kept our ancestors in submission, was with these beatings. And there has to be a different way.
I think that there's definitely, I know for me, I don't think that getting my ass beat helped me. I think that maybe in some cases it may have stopped me from doing something in some cases, but for the most part, if I was gonna do something, I was gonna do it. I think communication, understanding certain things that a lot of us as Black parents don't like to or feel that we need to explain to our kids. Things like, I remember as a kid, being taught, like, don't, you don't need to know how much I make, or don't look at the bills, or don't look at how much this costs, or, don't, if you touch that, then that means you got to pay for it, stuff like that. And I think that but always told to save.
But don't really understand the concept of money or concept of how much anything costs.
Right, right. Like, for real, like, not understanding, like, whoa, my mom was making maybe $5-6 an hour, and I want these $50 shoes, so she had to work 10 hours. So be- that she works 8 hours a day, so she'd have to work, over a day for me to just get these shoes. Wow.
And that don't even include the gas to go to the store. That doesn't include the taxes. That doesn't include the car. That doesn't include any of that.
Exactly. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So there's
I wonder
this.
why that is, because I would say I probably was a little bit protective of, my kids like asking too many questions about finances or whatever, as an automatic, like, just response. But, not so much anymore. And certainly because they're older, but trying to get them to understand certain things. But why do you think we kept so many secrets, or so many secrets were kept from us about just how the world worked, except for the scary parts?
Goes
That's like, that'll be told to you. Like, don't do this, don't do that. Police, whatever.
goes back to slavery. Goes back to slavery. Scare tactics. It was being taught to us. We've used them. They've worked because, hey, being afraid maybe kept you out of trouble, but it also kept you from asking questions. It kept you from challenging things. It kept you from leaving your comfort zone. It kept you from leaving the hood. It kept you from wanting to buy these shoes and spend this money to look good right now, and not understanding the importance of maybe saving that money to do some things later on. It keeps you from, making that extra drive to the grocery store. And, instead of stopping and picking up that chicken, it tastes good and it's quicker and it's easier and it's cheaper anyways, not realizing that in the long run, when you got high blood pressure and you got all this other stuff, well, it's not going to happen to me. But then again, it happens to all of us, so it's normal. So why not? I mean, that's what I see.
I think it has stunted the critical thinking skills of folks too.
You say it stunts the critical thinking skills?
Yeah, I think I think not asking questions and not being able to ask questions, not being able to challenge anything, and being in those spaces where, children should be seen and not heard, and staying out of grown folks' business, there's no room for critical thinking.
Exactly.
And there's no room to challenge anything, because if you're challenging, then you're back talking. If you're back talking, you about to get your butt whooped. Because
Exactly.
why are you questioning what I'm saying to you? Do as I say, not as I do, but just do as I say, and don't ask why. Okay, so I want to rewind just a little bit, because speaking of critical thinking skills, we need to talk about Trump again.
Oh, boy.
So after we had the conversation,
Okay.
and you said Black men can relate to Trump because of a variety of reasons. Lo and behold, here comes Trump talking about Black folks relating to him because of him being persecuted and having a mugshot and what have you. And, we texted about it and laughed. But also what I saw online was a lot of chatter of, I think I want to call them the political elites, but people who are very well in tune with politics, who are just taken aback by Trump's comments and, calling them racist and saying that there are so many other people that Black people look up to, which is also true, but they were naming folks like Mary McLeod Bethune and Harriet Tubman and Shirley Chisholm. And those are our heroes. Those are the people we look up to. We don't look up to Trump. We don't relate to him. And a lot of folks do look up to those historic figures. However, we're missing a point. And so I just wanted to bring this conversation back real quick because my spidey senses and my gut is telling me that this is how we lose an election, because obviously there are folks who relate to Trump. New York Times did a poll, and about 22% of Black people of this poll said that they would vote for Trump. So there's something there. And I feel like we're ignoring it, or we're being flippant about it. And I'm not sure how we fix that.
People want to feel superior, but I also see this thing right now where everybody needs to feel like a victim at some point. You know, I mean, and that's Trump's whole thing, is he's relating to everybody that feels like they've been had. The rich people that feel like they've been fucked over. The politicians that feel like they've been fucked over. The people that feel like the government's been fucking them over. Now it's the system, you know, how the court system. Now the whole thing is with this whole Fonnie Willis situation, and you see how a week later this whole thing is falling apart. If you've been paying attention, it's falling apart. And a lot of it's going to fall apart based on their credibility. And then you know it's about to happen. He's going to point. Now he can say, now you see, they need to change the whole judicial system and everything in Georgia. Georgia is that great state that actually was a state that was huge in a part of him losing in the first place, correct? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
You see how all of this plays out in the long run?
Mm-hmm.
It's not good. It's not good. But ultimately, I feel like it all balances out, and this is just a part of the grand scheme. You can't just focus on this moment. These moments and these times are just a blip in history. I mean, think about it. What was it, 4 years ago? We was going through COVID. We thought the world was about to end. We didn't forget about that. There was a point during that time where I thought people were going to be wearing masks and you'd never see buffets and people being out in the open or wanting to eat at a restaurant or anything. We forgot about that shit. Back to normal. That's how we are.
Yeah.
We'll adjust. So,
Yeah. And I think you are right. And I think that that's the scary part, is that as things that are acutely awful and scary, that at some point we just sort of adjust to it, and then it becomes normal. And I think that's how we end up in such disarray. And I think about, the idea of, politicians behaving, and the amount of mayhem that was caused on my birthday on January 6th, to me was so scary. And to many people, like, it was the most frightening thing we had seen when it comes to, political upheaval, in modern times in the United States. And I just think if we allow things to keep continuing the way they are, then it's just going to be like, oh, January 6th was just January 6th.
oh, it's already there, and I think it's kind of too late in a weird way. I don't know how people didn't see January 6th coming. I saw it. I mean, yeah, no question. And I'm seeing certain things now. And I'm telling you, if Donald Trump is on the ballot, he is gonna win by a landslide. All that stuff he said before, biggest, what's the word I'm looking for? Man, my brain works too fast sometimes. But the biggest margin in history, yeah, that's what's gonna happen. I'm not saying it like I wish it. It's just I don't just listen to people and platforms and points of views that I agree with. I'm not listening for just a whole bunch of reinforcement because I know what I feel and believe. So I don't even really even need that shit reinforced like that. I think it's cool to be aware of other things and try to find common denominators. And I think more often than not, we don't operate from that place. And if we at least attempted it, and I'm not always there, I don't want to make it sound like like I'm that person because I'm definitely not always there. But it's just so strange. It's really strange.
Yeah, it is strange. I mean, I
Yeah.
think, this is an ongoing conversation. I mean, because so many other things can be brought up. It's like, okay, so then what? You know, what does that look like for Black folks? What does that look like for women? What does that look like for reproductive rights? What does that look like for economic justice? What does that look like for our housing situations? And what does that look like for the wars that are currently happening and continuing to happen, in various parts of the world, including countries in Africa, as well as Gaza and Israel and Ukraine and wherever else there's an uprising that is just not even on our radars, because there always are. All of it just sounds so frightening. But at the same time, we also then need to keep our eyes open and be prepared. So it's like, what does that mean for us in our little corners of the world?
I feel like there's just gonna be a full weird reset. Stuff is bigger than just the politics of it all. Like, I don't know what it means for Black people and women and people of color and, the so-called have-nots and minorities or whatever if Trump's in office, the same way I really don't know what it means if Biden is in office or anybody else for the most part. But I believe that you have to start it within your community. And when just even within your community, that means like, hey, maybe you just make sure your yard's clean, then your street. Then you branch out and maybe you find other things that are interesting. Maybe you're interested in music and then you find some community stuff, or I don't know, but overall, I see a full reset happening.
Honestly, I just wanted to bring this back up mostly because I feel as though, as a person who works in politics and, is inside of a bubble, that sometimes I think other people who are also inside of this bubble forget that there are people who are completely outside of the bubble and think differently. And there's not enough time spent talking to those folks about what it is they think or need or want or understand of the workings of the world or the workings of our political system. And it's those folks who, that 22% of Black folks who, are supportive of Trump, instead of being flippant, ask why and try to understand it and relate to it in a way that maybe you can have a deeper conversation. Doesn't mean you're going to change their mind, because you're not going to change everyone's mind about anything. But to be so flippant, and just the amount of, I guess sort of, I don't know, disregard to how folks are relating to him, to me was just like a big red flag. Like, y'all are missing a whole point. And you're missing a whole demographic of people that you should be talking to, instead of either making fun of or assuming that they don't exist.
Yeah. I think it's very you could vote for Trump and not be a Trump supporter. And I think that people get it mixed up. And then there's this thing where that's part of how Trump runs. He even runs on that whole thing. They're making you vote because you're black, and you have to vote Democrats, and you have to vote a Democrat because you're black, and or because you're a minority. And then it's like, well, wait a minute, maybe that ain't what that's not what I want to do. you know and for the record, I'm not voting for Trump. I need to say that. I feel like there's like you just really
Yes.
needed me to say that. you know
There are going to be people who think, man, he's a
I
whole
know
Trump
that.
supporter.
But it's like that, but there was this part of me that don't want to say that I'm not voting for Trump. I'm not saying that I'm voting for Biden. And I'll say that. I'll say that. I'm not just voting for him. I'm not being forced to do that. And I don't want to hear that a vote for Biden or not voting for Biden is a vote for that. Man, all of that, we back to that whole thing for me of
The
that's
scare tactics.
the scare tactics, the slavery to make you do this. That's part of the problem. There are Republicans that don't want to vote for Trump, but they
Hmm.
don't want to lose.
Yeah.
They
And there are Democrats who may not want to vote for Biden, but they also don't want to lose.
exactly. I ain't doing that.
But what do we win?
What we been winning? What have we been winning? You tell me something. You really tell me something to tell some kids living in Detroit right now, going to school the way they go to school, living the way they're living. You tell me why they should vote. And I understand, make your voices heard, all of that. Show me some examples of what they should do.
So now, back to our conversation about parenting.
And we're gonna end up doing what you were doing anyway.
Mm-hmm.
That's the other thing. I mean, my kids,
Learned it from you, Dad.
I mean, they don't even have to tell me. I see it, you know, and we talk about it, and it's cool. I wasn't always. I mean, early in their lives, I was definitely 100% the deadbeat dad. I was not that dude that was there and spent a lot of years beating myself up about it and not really dealing with it, not knowing how to deal with it, not knowing how to confront it in moments of wanting it and attempting to confront it, having the idea that, hey, me just making that phone call or text message or whatever I decided to do would be enough, that everything should be cool. But realizing that, now realizing and understanding that it's a journey, it's a process, it's a continuing thing that will be growing, for the rest of our lives together. And I love it. Now I've earned it, but it's a process. It's a process.
The question that I would ask you is, um, why were you a deadbeat dad? And then why was it so hard to make that next step? Like, was it something that you were afraid of? Or is it sometimes just that first step of like realizing, yeah, I need to say I'm sorry or I need to do X, Y, and Z, but I don't know how to, so then I avoid it?
I think well, first off, I was selfish. And that would be my overall, excuse me, that would be my overall answer if I just gave a basic answer. After all of the exploration and understanding and going back and doing some unpacking of my childhood, accepting some things, remembering some things, and then doing a bunch of like not getting stuck there, but on some like comparison or looking back and relating certain things and seeing the relation to certain things. A lot of it was being stuck at 7 in some aspect and having to grow up in another aspect on a whole nother level in order to protect myself and survive, to get through, emotionally. Because for the most part, I know that I had it better than most of my friends when I think about it. I had a mother and a father at home. I had a stepfather, So a lot of my friends, when I think about it, most of them, they didn't have a dad at home. That was very normal. And then I understand what happened there. That was crack. That's what happened. It's look, what have you ever watched Snowfall?
I've seen an episode here or there, but I know the premise of it.
That era is the era I grew up. My dad died in 1980. And my dad was getting involved into the drug game before it really he died in 80, and that stuff really started getting crazy right after the 80s. But most of that started then. And a lot of those kids and a lot of my friends' parents were the parents that, the plants and things like that. And then crack happened. And a lot of the dudes that I looked up to in the hood sold drugs, then became either crack addicts or went to prison. And then my era was the era that sold the drugs to them and then went to prison. And then there was my era was the era that wasn't there with the kids, either because we were in prison or sold the drugs or was just straight up irresponsible because we didn't deal with the shit that we went through with our kids. There was, even like you think about with our parents, or at least my mom and my parents or my grandparents, they at least stayed married. There was at least some type of like, hey, you go to work or you do this or you do that now. But then that's when you talk about them secrets again, but there was kids over here, a whole nother family over there. Wife don't say nothing. If that's where the secrets happen. I know that my grandfather was an alcoholic and was extremely abusive to my grandmother and the kids in a way that I couldn't even imagine. Nightmarish type stuff. And
But she stayed.
well, no. My grandmother at some point left. And my grandmother left at a time when black women couldn't get credit, couldn't get a house, couldn't go to college. She went to college. She got a degree. She got a house, brand new. She went and got cars. She always had her own. And she raised her two oldest daughters to be the same way. So, but they also grew up in some crazy abusive shit where, you know, they saw their dad, who, when he wasn't drunk, was a good man. But when he got that liquor in him, and at some point that became all the time, all hell would break loose. But that was their 7. You know what I'm saying? Like when I talk about that 7 and what 7 was, what happened around 7 for me and the things that I went through. That's what they grew up with. So they had their own challenges and battles and things that they didn't deal with as they was trying to raise us, you know? And they got better, and they were better than their parents in some ways, and maybe in some ways they weren't. But, you know what I'm saying? So I do believe that there's this progression, but in a lot of cases, we have to be honest with ourselves about we gotta really be honest to have real hurtful conversations, and having those hurtful conversations, be okay with the outcome. You know what I mean? Like, it's not gonna feel good.
I think that's an important, point. And what it makes me think about is, everyone plays a different character in someone's story. And no one is a complete villain, but no one is a complete hero either. Exactly. And so your grandfather could be he could be a lot of things. He can and be loved by your mom and aunts or uncles or whomever in the family, but also be this abusive person who does really awful things. And figuring out, I think sometimes it's hard to figure out how to love somebody who you see do terrible things. And so, because it's never an all or nothing, it's never, I completely hate them. And sometimes it is, but usually it's not, I hate somebody and I don't want them in my life anymore. Sometimes it's, I love them, but I can't have them in my life in the same way, especially if they're not, seeing it themselves and wanting to change or any of that. And I think that causes that compounded generational pain, because you don't know what to do with that. Like, what do you do with somebody you love who does some awful things to someone else that you love or to you?
Right.
How do you fix that? And especially if you can't fix other people if they don't want to be fixed. But to love somebody from afar and not like their actions, but needing to stay afar to protect yourself.
Hey, they played their part in your journey,
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean...
And that could be it, and then it's over.
Right. I mean, right. They're definitely a part of the story, good and bad, and even if the bad brings out good shit, it was definitely a part of your story that is just as... the lows are just as important as the highs. Actually, in a lot of cases, sometimes those lows are more important, I think, you know, unfortunately.
So, what kind of father are you now?
I think I'm the real father. Um, you know, with with my kids, they know that they can call me, and they know that I'm gonna be honest with them. I'm not gonna judge. I have an opinion. I can be moody, and they know that. I guess that's just who I am, but they know that I'm gonna be honest with them. I'll get that phone call at 3 in the morning from my now 31-year-old son. No, he just turned 30. He'll be 31 this year. Who's in LA, and he's a videographer and living his dream, but in a way that he's enjoying the journey, because I do believe that maybe he didn't realize his path would take him where he is at this moment, but he's enjoying the ride and doing 10 times better than I was doing at his age. Like, not even, and even that in itself is like amazing, to see your kids doing way better than you are, or than you were at their age, and to just see them thriving, and then them knowing that they can hit you up and ask, for some advice. Say, Dad, I got to make a decision on this, or I'm feeling like this, or I didn't like when you said this. Let's talk about it. And we could talk about it, you know.
I mean, I think that's the part that's the living the dream, I think. When your kids are doing so much better than you were at that point. But also that they do ask for advice. I think that probably makes me, is one of the happiest times when my children are um, thinking enough to ask me my opinion of something and wanting to hear what I think, and we can just have a conversation about it, because parenting adults is a lot different than parenting children. So, given that space to relay my wisdom, and even getting into some of the crap that I had did and mistakes I had made that I wouldn't want them to make, and being able to impart that on them and them actually hear it in a way that is not meant to sound preachy, or do as I say, you got to do this sort of
Mm-hmm.
thing, but it's you know here's what I think, and it's just a conversation. I think it's that makes me happy.
Man, that's everything. I tell them often, the most important thing to me that I want them to know is that you can always call your dad. Like, maybe I can't come and get you, or maybe I can't be right there, or maybe I can't bail you out of this one with some money, or whatever the case may be. But the ultimate thing is, I think I want you. I think it's horrible when, as a kid, you just can't call, or not even as a kid, just you should always be able to call your parents. Not even if you on a not even in a way like, oh, I need to call my mama, or I need to you know call your daddy or whatever, but just on some like, yo, what's up, or hey, you've experienced this, maybe you can give me some advice, or I don't know. It's just, I want you to always be able to call me. You in trouble, I ain't judging you. I'm gonna listen, and I'm gonna be there for you. And if you're on some bull, I'm going to tell you you're on some bullshit too. And not hesitate to tell you that, but I'm going to still have your back.
So let me ask you this then. Knowing that it took you a while to catch on to this whole parenting thing, this whole being a dad thing, are your children, did they accept you when you decided and when you finally got to the point where you're like, I want to be serious about this and I want to be a good father and I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. And, maybe it wasn't a speech that you gave to say as such, but when you started to actually, invest the time and, effort and emotional intelligence that it takes to be a good parent, were they receptive?
I mean, well, you're talking about different emotions, different kids, different mothers, different backgrounds, different histories, and they have different feelings, different perceptions of things. So, one thing that I had to learn, that it wasn't gonna be some cookie cutter thing. And it couldn't be about me. And I had to be available when they were ready. And that took some time. So no, they weren't receptive even when they said they were. Or maybe their reception at times wasn't the reception that I had in mind or that I had anticipated, and vice versa. I think that at times their expectations of what they wanted from me, I fell short, and in some of them cases, they never were gonna get it and never would, and that's what we have to accept. But that's just part of the journey. But you gotta, it's worth it. It's definitely been worth it. Because as I've grown with my seeds, and notice I said I've grown with them.
Mm-hmm.
I've become a better person. Just better in general. And I learn a lot about myself because, I see myself in them, and I see the things, I see how I've affected them, good and bad.
Mm-hmm.
And we talk about it. At this point, it's like they're at a point where it's like, Dad, listen, dude, we don't have to. We're good. It's like, come on, man. I don't think of you like that anymore. It's like, hey, my bad. I'm calling later than I said. It's like, dude, I already knew you. They know I'm gonna call. If I say I'm gonna call, I'm calling. Mm-hmm. If I say I'm coming, I'm coming. If I can't come, I'm gonna tell you I can't come.
You feel like you're still making up for lost time or bad behavior?
I don't feel like I'm making up for bad behavior, but I don't take being a father for granted. I don't take being their dad for granted. I'm proud of being their dad. It's not like I'm just somebody's father. It's like it's a joy. It's an honor. It's an honor to be their dad and to now be a grandfather. And yeah, it's some shit that, if anything, I wish I would have caught on sooner.
Mm-hmm.
But I also understand like that was just a part of the journey, and in that, it has helped me become. I think it's helped me be a stepfather. You know, I'm a stepfather now. Man, we don't use the term step, but I do think that my experiences growing up how I grew up has helped me be a great husband and stepfather, step-parent, and co-parenting with my daughter's dad, her real dad, because I had that experience. I was the stepkid, I've been that father that had to deal with and accept that, other men were around my kids. I've been that man that's dated someone who had kids. You know what I mean? So I've been in all of these different roles, and so I think that's helped me to be able to be understanding and very respectful of all of those different perspectives. And then had to learn a new perspective with, my adult kids, watching me be a father now, to a kid that I met at 3 years old, 3.5 years old, that's now 12. So there were moments that they saw me do and be involved in. Now they're adults seeing something and seeing a piece of their dad that they never got a chance to see. And then us having to address that,
Yeah. You feel like they missed.
Yeah.
What it was gonna say? What is that? Because I can put a lot of different names on it. Jealousy, or
it's a whole lot.
It was like, what the heck? You're doing this now? And when I was 5, 6, 7, and 12 years old, where was you at?
Exactly. And to have these conversations, the conversations that we could have about that, or the explanations, or how they understand it how they understood it when maybe we had that conversation 4 or 5 years ago, is totally different than them having that conversation, especially my oldest kids. Really, no, all of them. Because, and for the record, I have 4 kids, 5 total, but 4 before marriage. And their ages are now late 20s, early 30s. And the youngest being 12. And that's our, that's my daughter by marriage.
Baby.
Yeah, that's my daughter by marriage. So, with that being said, talking to them in their early and mid-20s about why I did certain things, and them being 30, and having different understandings about life and bills and relationships and people, they have a different understanding of it. So I know that now they understand who their dad was at 30. Maybe they weren't looking at who their dad was at 30 when they were 25. They were looking at them at 7 years old, watching, they're watching their stepsister wake up at Christmas with their dad, That's what they saw.
And I think there's a thing of, it can be difficult for children to see their parents as people, as
Right.
human beings.
Exactly.
They are not, you are a parent and you're supposed to know all the things, you're supposed to do all the things, you're supposed to get it right because you're the parent.
You're the
And
parent.
so, I have told my children over and over again that, both me and their father, that we are just human beings who are, sometimes going along to get along. We have no idea what we're doing. We have no idea, how to get in and out of certain situations. And we just do our best to figure it out. And sometimes we make mistakes. Sometimes we are short-sighted. Sometimes, our tempers or our attitudes are crappy because we are just human beings who have emotions and feelings the same way that you do. But, if it shows, on the parent side, kids can be sometimes very unforgiving in that space because they're like, well, you should just be doing better, you should know better, sort of things. Even if they don't use those words to articulate it, that it feels as though there's just this level of disappointment because we've disappointed our children in so many ways because we've we're we're faulty people because we all are.
Mm-hmm.
And that sits with them longer. So similarly, when we talked about how um small situations in people's lives, that those memories stay with you for whatever reason. Same way with kids. And it's like, my mom yelled at me for X, Y, and Z, and it wasn't fair. And it may not have been fair, but mom might have also been dealing with whatever dad was doing, whatever work was doing, whatever stuff we're carrying around, the baggage from our own parents and what have you. And those things compounded. And in that moment, it triggers something. And now we're, continuing sometimes, I think, a cycle of nonsense. But, I think when kids finally understand that their parents are just human beings, like just out here struggling the same way they are, just older and in, somewhat different situations, I think that it allows them a little bit of space for deference
But I
for their
think
parents.
parents got to be human beings, and parents have to, you know, talk about the things that they did. I mean, I believe there's a lot of parents that, hey, they don't want to say that they ever did certain things. Like, they don't want to admit that, hey, maybe I smoked weed at this point in my life, or, I had sex maybe a little sooner than I would have liked to have had sex. They don't want to admit these things and be honest. And we don't humanize ourselves as parents. It's like, especially in the Black community, I'm your mama, that's that. Period. End the discussion. It's like, well, no, your mama is a woman. Your dad is a man. Women do certain things. What better way to find out about some certain things about sex and dealing with
And they
relationships than
and they
with your
had lives
parents?
before you were born.
Exactly. Hey, I'll tell my kids, and I'm not proud of these things. I don't tell them these things in a way to brag about it, but I tell them real situations that happen with their mothers where maybe I was an asshole. Like, yeah, I wasn't right when I did this, and this is what I did. It's my way of letting you know, like, yo, even your dad was an asshole, or, even, things happen. We got through it. But look out for this. Don't fall for that. Remember this. Your uncle did that. He's still a good person. Don't mean he's a bad person, but be prepared for certain things. But we have to use ourselves as examples at times. I totally believe that. I think that matters, and not just in good, in bad, to show a point of reference.
Well, I appreciate you. And so I'm going to end this podcast episode because we can obviously talk for a very long time.
I know, right?
And but I appreciate you taking the time to, be on this side of the podcast instead of behind the scenes. And I think this is a really dope episode. So I appreciate you. And I can't wait to see what this sounds like edited.
Man, I'm just nervous about editing my own voice. Ooh. It should be fun though. But thank you. I'm honored. This is cool. Maybe eventually we can get an episode with. I'd like to do one with Derek and Ramon.
Ramon, yes.
The four of us. That'd be interesting.
All my favorite men folk on one podcast at the same time. Woo.
That might be a lot.
That might be a whole lot.
Oh.
I don't even know. Yeah, that would be a whole lot.
Yeah, that's too much.
We'll work on that. Look, I'm putting it on a sticky note.
Uh-oh. Okay.
I'm putting it on a sticky note.
Put it on a sticky note.
I'm going to put it on a sticky note.
All right.
So, all right. I think we're good.
All right. That was fun.
That was fun. This is Sticky Note Conversations with Erika Washington. I have been the executive director of Make It Work Nevada and Make It Work Nevada Education Fund for almost 7 years. We have advocated for social justice issues as a reproductive justice organization that has helped hopefully thousands of people over the course of our lifetime. But before that, I was a journalist and I loved it. That's where I learned the ins and outs of Las Vegas, where I learned the history and had the opportunity to talk to some amazing people. And as much as I enjoy the work that I do now, I miss journalism. I missed being able to have deep conversations with people. And if anybody knows me, if anybody's ever been to my office, they know that I am a lover of sticky notes. I write everything down on a sticky note. So I create an array of sticky notes on my desk, on my wall. If I have a new idea, put it on a sticky note. Someone I want to meet with, sticky note. Need to remember to pay a parking ticket, write it on a sticky note. As a matter of fact, I still need to actually do that. But over the course of the last year, this sticky note has been on my desk to launch this podcast. And now here we are. This will allow me to dive into some more deep conversations with some really interesting people. Because I want to have real conversations that were more than just sound bites or regurgitated talking points about fluffy topics. My hope is that each episode feels like old friends catching up, revealing great information, but also humanity, struggle, victory, joy, grief, and possibly a flicker of transcendence. So join me here every Saturday as I pull a new sticky note off my desk and dive into some great conversation.
Thanks for listening to Sticky Note Conversations with Erika Washington. Hosted and executively produced by Erika Washington, with music, mixing, and editing by Black Gypsy LLC. Special thanks to KUNV 91.5 in Las Vegas. This show is powered by Make It Work Nevada, a project of Tides Advocacy.